This video, I want to show you how to create a fixed table header when you scroll through a page. So this by default is not very easy to do because tables have the header aligned. If I have this example right here, you can see the header is aligned and it has the column widths to match these columns. And it's usually not a really easy thing to do, and you have to rely on JavaScript. So in this video, I want to show you how to do that without having to use a plugin and stuff. So what we're going to do is I have two versions. I have this version, and this version actually has a really long table, and as you start scrolling, it actually attaches to the top of the window frame, and when you go back to the top, it detaches itself. And the other version that I have, version 2, is where you actually have a fixed height table, is how I would put it. And basically when you scroll in this area right here, it actually scrolls to the table and this stays at the top, and it allows you to not have a really long page. So my personal preference, I actually think this is a better solution rather than trying to make a fixed height table, but they're both about the same, so we're going to focus on both of them. So here I have this table or this page, and this table has nothing to it. It's an empty document, or the JavaScript's empty. So we're going to focus on this right here. So let me close out these other tabs and go to TextMate. Okay, so basically what we have here are these two HTML documents, and it's basically just a lot of dummy data at the top and some basic styling. So what we're going to do first is we need to look and see how the best way to accomplish this is. And from what I have found is that if you duplicate this header here, which are these top two colored background rows, if you duplicate this and place it inside of the table itself, then it makes it a lot easier to make sure that these widths stay the same and that it aligns properly. So what we're going to do is, to start off, we're going to create a couple of variables. First of all, we're going to grab our table, which will be just jQuery, and we're going to grab that table tag. And then we're also going to grab the table head, or the T head, and what we're going to do is put this as table.find that T head. And I'm also going to go ahead and create a variable for fixed T head. And that's going to be null by default just right now, because we need to actually do something first. And what we need to do is, if we just inspect these columns here, and this just did not get put in a very good spot, and I can't seem to resize it. There it goes. It's closer. Okay, so if we look at these table rows here, so we have this right here, these columns, the TDs, they don't actually have a width defined on them. Now if we look at their computed style, you can see they actually have a width, but right now these are dynamic, and if we start moving things around, they're going to change their widths. So what we need to do first is go ahead and make sure these have the width specified on them. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're just going to say we're going to go through our T head, we're going to find all the table columns or the TDs inside of it, and we're going to loop through each one of these, and we're just going to say var element equals this, and we're going to say element dot CSS, we're going to specify the width on it, it's going to be equal element dot width. Pretty basic. So we're just going to loop through and we're going to manually set these widths. Now when I reload this page, you're going to see that things are going to move over just like a pixel, and it's just the way it works. But you can see there's not a real big change to this, and in fact you could probably use outer width, and I don't know if it'll make that big of a difference. Actually makes a big difference. I don't know why. I can't really see the difference. It moves out a little bit. So we're going to stick with just regular width, and that's perfect. So now that we've actually specified this, now we can actually clone our table head and put it into this variable. So what we'll do is we'll say fixed T head equals our table head dot clone. And what we'll also do is we're going to say T head dot after, and here we're going to actually place our fixed T head. So we reload this page. Now you can see that we have two table headers inside of this, and we're pretty much ready to go with setting the position on this element here. So what we're going to do now, I guess what I'll show you for now is that the reason we're using this after tag is that because when I wrote this before and I tested it on Windows, IE 6, 7, and 8 had problems with append, because my preferred method would probably be to put in here and say append to, and here put that table. And every time, I don't remember if it's only prepend to, append to, append, or whatever it is, I just had problems with it. So I'm going to just stick with after here. And as you can see, it does the job perfectly. It's just 2 lines of code and it's not chained. So what we're going to do now is eventually we're going to add a hide on here because this isn't supposed to be visible right away. But before we can do that, we need to actually go ahead and we need to position this where it goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our fixed T head and I'm going to specify the CSS on it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set our position to absolute, and I'm sorry, fixed, and we're going to set our top to 0. So if I do that, you can see it gets pushed up, and as I scroll, it's lined up and it's doing perfectly. Now, the thing that I do want to do here, that as you can see it works perfectly fine as it is right here, right now, is go ahead and just specify the width on this to be our thead.width. And as you can see, nothing changes. It might actually not even be necessary, but whenever I wrote this the first time, that is how I did it, and I just feel better just putting that in there because I know that even though these have their widths and things, that the T head still has the same width as the original one. So now we're actually ready to get into the fun part, and the fun part is saying how do we figure out when this fixed one should be visible. So let's go ahead and just start off by putting this in and hiding it so we can't see it. And as you can see, I have hidden the wrong one. We need to hide this one, so let's put that in here and say, actually we'll put it on this line, I'm sorry, hide. There we go. So now you can see we have it back to where it looks like our normal table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable here called the window. And that's going to equal to jQuery, and we're just going to find the window here, the actual element for the window. And we're going to do that because we're going to reference this variable a couple of times. So we're going to say is the window, when we scroll, we're going to run a function, and the function that we want to do is we want to say if the window dot scroll top is greater than, and here we're going to get that table dot offset dot top, and if it is, then we're going to say our fixed T head needs to be shown. So if I reload this and I start scrolling down, you can see it looks like it just attaches to it, and it's actually just a clone, but it looks good. So to fix that, where it actually, when you come back up to the top, so what we'll do is we'll say else, and here we're going to say fixed T head dot hide. If we reload the page, it goes away, we scroll down, it pops up, we scroll up, it freezes, I guess. So we've actually accomplished to make this work. This is perfect. It's exactly what we set out to do. Now, there's two problems. The first is that I actually gave this particular page a really tall height. So if I go all the way to the bottom of this table, it follows with us. So I don't know how common that is. My pages, whenever I use tables, generally don't have a lot of scroll underneath the table, but it is a problem, and if you want to fix it, we're going to do that right now. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to add another if. We're going to say if the window dot scroll top is greater than our table dot offset top. And actually, you know what we're going to do? Let's just put it inside of this if right here. And we're going to also say if the window dot scroll top is greater than our table dot offset dot top plus the table's height then we want to hide it. So we'll grab that. Put that in there, and when I scroll past it, it disappears. Now what we also probably need to do is put this in here, but add the thead.height to it, or we'll just do fixed. So now when the bottom of it actually hits, it disappears, right? I'm sorry, we need to subtract that number. Okay, try it again, and down it disappears. Perfect. So that's how you do that. Now I'm really not entirely sure where this should be placed right here. When I wrote it originally, I had put it after this, but it really doesn't matter just as long as you have it. So I think, I don't know, all of these ifs are going to get run pretty quickly. If I put this inside of this one or not, it's not a big deal. They're not going to conflict with each other unless I put this right here above this line. Now that we've actually got this working, the fun part begins, and the fun part is that this doesn't really work in IE6 and 7. IE8 has a problem with IE6, 7, and 8 have a problem with the append, but IE6 and IE7 both have problems with position fixed. Now IE7 can be fixed, I guess, or the solution can be found by changing the doc type to a more strict doc type. I don't know exactly how to do that. I don't know that doc type. But IE6 doesn't even support the position fixed, I don't know what you call that, property and value. So the easiest way to get the position fixed for both of those browsers that I know of is to attach a handler to the scroll event that says, as we're scrolling, that we want to move the thead from the top so that it sticks to the top of the scroll bar. I'm sorry, the window right here, like this one does. But then another problem comes up is that you can't actually change the position on a thead in IE6 and 7. So you actually have to go a long workaround and actually change each one of the table rows inside of it, which if you only, like this one's very special, it has 2 of them. You might not have your tables like this. This is kind of uncommon, but if you do, I just put it like this so you could see how it's done. But if you don't, then you can just worry about one of them. And I'm going to show you real quick the code. I'm not going to write it out because we don't have IE6 and 7 to play around with here, but it's relatively the same. One thing is that I did not include this in the original code, so let me paste that in real quick. Okay, good, and I'm going to copy and paste. So here it goes. We're going to replace this with the new code. So let me indent this properly. Is that good? I think it is. Okay, so the first thing that's really different is this right here. I'm sorry, all of this. And I actually took it from this website right here, and it is a little function that allows you to get the version of the browser. Basically, it just goes through and it checks to see if MSIE is in the app version, and if it is, then it's actually going to change the version down to IE6, 7, 8, and possibly even 9. I don't know. So you can read about it here. I think this is the article that I read that actually explains what this does and how it works a little bit better. So you can read it there. I don't want to go through it too much. Okay, so what we're going to do now, okay, the next big difference is right here with the way we get these 2 variables for table row 1 and table row 2. And that's again because we have 2 rows here. And the third thing is we get did scroll. Now this is where it becomes a little more fun. When we are in I6 or 7, because it's less than 8, then we're actually going to position the table rows to the top of the page. And then we're going to go through and we're going to set these variables, table row 1, table row 2, and when we do table row 2, we're going to set the margin top of this to the height of table row 1, which is going to push this so that they stack like this again, where the green one's below the gray one. Else, this is where we handle kind of a normal browser, I guess, browsers that support fixed. And then what we do is as we are scrolling and we're supposed to show our t head, then we set this variable did scroll to true. And when we do that, it's going to get caught by this looping and never-ending function that says if we did scroll, then set did scroll to false, which keeps it so that this, when you scroll, it says to true. When this runs, it says to false, and it goes back and forth. And when it is true, when this little if statement gets called or goes through and executed, it's actually going to set the new top of both of these elements. Now you could actually change this up to be tr1 and then 0 to get that element, and tr2 0, and then do this so you do it all in one shot. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this work, and we're going to make it work because, so you can see it at least, we're going to change this to say 7 for version. So now as I start scrolling, you can't see anything, but as soon as I hit, as soon as I start scrolling, it starts showing these. Now, fun, we're not actually getting the second one, and I don't know why. Okay, so here is our second table row. And when I start scrolling, oh, it actually didn't find that. And I bet I put in tr1, tr1. No? Tell you what, let's go back to the original and see what that does. So we're going to force this to return that we are in IE7. And there it goes. So it's working. I don't know what the problem with that is, but as you can see, this is working again, where you can actually scroll through this page, and this is what it looks like in i6 and 7. So it looks fine. I mean, you can't really tell. And the reason I say you can't really tell is because I'm on a Mac with a Magic Mouse. If you've ever seen one, it's more like a trackpad than a mouse on the top, and you can scroll with incredible precision. But with my PC that I have beside me, the scroll ball is actually one of those little wheel things that click. I don't know how many mice are like that now, but when you scroll, it jumps like, I don't know, like this. It's more of like snap, 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 and this sits right there with it. So there we go. We finished version 1 of this fixed table header right here. So this is what it looks like. This is how it works. It's very easy to accomplish. So what we're going to do now is focus on version 2, which, as you can see, we have an empty slate, and we're going to open that up real quick. So this one, what we're going to do is we're actually going to set this to have a fixed height. So what we're going to do for that is we need to grab a few variables. We need the table again. We're going to need the table head. We're going to need a fixed table head, and also a fixed table. And lastly, we're going to need the fixed table wrapper. Okay, so we have a whole lot of stuff for fun stuff going on here. So our table is going to be, we're going to grab that table. Our t head is going to be, we're going to grab the table.find t head. We're not going to set our fixed t head yet because we're going to need this to run just like it did before right here, where we actually set a width on these TDs and then we clone it. So let's copy that over here, and we'll paste that below these variables. Okay, and for the fixed table, what this is basically, it's going to be a wrapper that holds our table head. And we're going to do this because you can't just make this table a certain height. I mean, you can wrap it in a div, you can give it a scroll bar and all that stuff, but when you do that, the whole table head's going to scroll with it. So what we need to do is clone this head and put it above here so that this area scrolls, but this one stays fixed. That makes sense, if you will, and hopefully this makes sense. It's almost as if this is going to be, oh, I don't know. Let's just go and do it and you'll see it. So we're going to need a new table, and what we're going to do here is we're going to say this is our table, and we're going to specify, we're going to recreate our table here. We're going to set the cell padding, the cell spacing, and the border. So let's go in here and let's say cell padding is going to be 5, and cell spacing is going to be 0, and our border is going to be 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in here now that we've created this fixed table, and we're going to say, we'll do this first, I guess. We'll say table.before, and here we're going to put in that fixed table. So if I reload the page, now you can see we have a table up here. And what we're also going to do is we're going to say, we're going to have this fixed table. We're going to say fixed thead dot insert. So what we'll do is we'll say table dot append our fixed thead. So reload the page, and you can see we don't get anything. I'm sorry, this is the wrong one. We need our fixed table. Okay, so there we go. So now we have that here. And one last thing I want to do is I want to give this an ID of fixed table wrapper. So I'm sorry, not wrapper. Is that right? I actually have the CSS at the top and this table header right here. And this is a quick hack simply because I set my table to have this margin top of 20 pixels so that these links could sit up here. And when I did that and I put this new table on top of it, it actually sits too high, as you're seeing now. So this quick hack is something you probably wouldn't do on your website. I only did it this way because I didn't want to try to write a special template for this because I just wanted to get it done quick. So when I change this header over, it should fix itself. It almost does. We need to change that margin bottom. So let's actually go up to 20 pixels. Let's say if that makes it sit 21, 22. There we go. That's pretty much right on top of the table. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to wrap this table so that it actually scrolls. So what we're going to do is go back down to the bottom. We have this fixed table wrapper, and this is actually going to be a div that is going to have a height of 400 pixels, and its overflow set to auto. Now you can do scroll, but on most browsers that'll automatically show a horizontal and vertical scroll bar. So if you do auto, then it only shows one of them. So this should be plenty for now. And what we're going to do is we're going to say table.wrap in our fixed table wrapper. So when I do that, it actually didn't work. Background blue. Actually, I think I did one of these wrong. One of these has to be in strings. Or quotes. That didn't do it. So let's inspect the element and figure out where this div got put. Here it is. And I do this every single time. You cannot set overflow. Overflow is not a tag. It is a CSS attribute. So I don't know why jQuery didn't just say, well, if they set the overflow here, it doesn't be like that, but they didn't. So here we go. Fix that, and there we go. So now this is actually scrollable. And one thing that I'm noticing is that this actually has a bad position on it. So let's just go to the top right here where we have our fixed table header. We'll say position is relative, and the Z index will set to 5. When I do that, now you can see that sits on top. And this is really close to what we want. The only problem is that we're showing this original T head. So what we'll do, if I can get down to the bottom, we're going to grab that T head and we're going to say dot hide, and then we'll say dot show on this one. Reload the page, and I did something wrong. Okay, so we want to hide this one after it's been placed. So let's just put it down here. We'll say tt head dot hide. There we go. So there you go. You can see now we have a scrollable table head or scrollable table, and this sits perfectly. Now I don't remember this one incredibly well. I actually wrote this out beforehand, and I'm looking through the source on the right side of my computer screen right here, and I think I got everything. This should work right away in IE6. IE8 and 9 and other Windows browsers. This does not work in IE6 and 7. And I don't really know what to do. I never looked into making it work properly. So if you want to play around with that, you can. Now, the only thing that I do know for a fact that I have not covered is that if I open this up in a browser that shows scroll bars, so let's grab this page and let's open it up in Firefox. Let me try to line it up properly with this little window I have here. If I paste that in and I open this up, you can see that they do not sit properly together. And the reason this is happening, if I can get around it, is because this scroll bar is pushing the table over. So what I did whenever I wrote this before, and not like before, I guess. I don't know. I wrote this a long time ago. What I did is I said when we loaded that we want to move, and remember that our, I'll just do it real quick. We'll say that our fixed table dot CSS, we're going to set our margin left to be negative. Actually, what we'll do is we'll say our yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to say our table dot offset dot left plus our fixed table dot offset dot left. No, minus. This needs to be a minus, and we're going to multiply this value by -1, and that'll turn that into a negative number, and it should line it up, but it doesn't. What did I set that to? I don't know. Margin left. It didn't turn that to a negative number. Why? And it pushed it like a mile off the page. So if I grab this one here, I disable that. If I set this to negative, what's it do? It sits way over there. That is not what I had. That's not what I intended. What if I set left here? Just to make sure. Okay, so that moves it. Now we just need to get this to multiply properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these variables in our console, look at them. So that's -15. Okay. It's because I got these variables backwards. What's that there? Place it in, and there it goes. It lines up. Now, that was a very good example of what I was thinking, is that you probably need to add an if statement to this to make sure that you don't push it too far over or whatever. But in this particular case, I think it's fine, especially because I know exactly how this is going to line up. But as you can see, that it lines up perfectly on this browser, Chrome, which does not show a scroll bar for some reason. It doesn't even change position, but on this browser it just looks fine. In fact, I don't know exactly why they're still aligned to the left and right or same spot when this one actually has a scroll bar right here. Anyways, that solves that bug or that little issue. Align the new table header with the original table. So that's what that does. So I'm probably going to put these two blocks of code up on a GitHub gist, or as a GitHub gist. So if you want to copy and paste them, you'll see a link in the YouTube description. Thank you for watching this video, and goodbye.